All right. Well, here we go, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our inaugural and very first introduction to the Uncommon Truth. I'd love to take this time, everyone who's watching, and thank you for watching. And I'd like to introduce the co-host here today. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into an introduction to the Uncommon Truth and what we're about and the journey that we're wanting to go on together with you. So with me today, I have Bob Embry and Tony Hallberg. These are two gentlemen that are friends of mine and people that I respect and trust. Myself, my background is, well, I'm 51. I'm a father of one son, 26, who just got married last week, doing a Zoom because of our pandemic crisis that we're currently going on. So it motivated me to just start doing the Uncommon Truth using Zoom. My background is 30 years as an entrepreneur in a very eclectic background. I've worked in everything from promotions and marketing, business development, sales, construction and development company, built a hotel, and a broad range of, well, truthfully, it's over 9 companies. And in the last 30 years that I've been involved with, owned, or operated. So now, since I tried a very short stint of retiring and golfing, I'm starting the Uncommon Truth and going on a journey with you and a whole host of friends to help ask the hard questions, to seek and then to find what that uncommon truth is. So that's my background. And now, Bob, would you please introduce us to all of our viewers today?
Thanks, Heath. My name is Bob Embry. I'm a father of 3, 35 years old, 34 years old, and stuff to share about raising families, raising children, having a wife for a long period of time as well, being in that kind of a partnership and relationship. I'm also a businessman. I've been lucky enough to work with Heath Stone doing business in China. I've also worked with hundreds of companies across North America, Canada, and the States. And my primary role is that of an educator. So I'm a leadership development specialist, work with thousands of leaders in these companies, helping them figure out the best strategies and methods to make their relationships with people improve. So I'm really excited to be here, Heath. Thanks. And Tony, thank you very much for inviting me, and looking forward to the next 30 minutes together.
Thank you, Bob. Well done. I can definitely say that it's been a real privilege, our friendship and our business relationship over those years. Tony.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, thanks, Heath. So my background, much like Bob, I am a father of 3, a little bit closer in age, but not quite. So 7, 6, and 1 right now. So there's a gap. Not as well timed as I could have done it, but you know, it makes things interesting. I live in Vancouver, BC. I guess my background sort of started in technology. I grew up sort of in the tech world, working around retail. That very quickly led me to e-commerce because why not? I was a retail guy that knew how to plug things in. So of course I can build an e-commerce website, right? And so that kind of led me onto that journey about probably about 12, 15 years ago now. I started it in some way, shape, or form, and it led me onto a path of being able to work with hundreds of kind of fast-growing brands and startups, some of the biggest names in retail and manufacturing that you'd recognize, all the way to the ones that sort of came out of nowhere, started an online razor company and then got bought for $3 billion kind of thing. So a lot of my background has been in business and sort of helping brands go online, go digital, that side of things. I like to call myself an entrepreneur stuck in a corporation for a long period of time, which I like to call as an intrapreneur. So I acted like a business owner for a long period of time inside other corporations, and recently I've just ventured out into starting my own software company. I now own 2 fitness centers, run my own consulting, and we'll be publishing a book here pretty soon. So that's kind of where I sit.
Well done.
Welcome, Tony. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome to the Uncommon Truth and co-hosting our inaugural and first ever episodes. So I really want to welcome all of you to the Uncommon Truth. And the three of us have been working together to launch the Uncommon Truth. And we'd really like to start by introducing our humble concept to you, right? And first, we realize that life's about transition and our ability to manage these uncertain times of transition that we're in right now. Who of us just a few months ago would have thought we'd be experiencing a global pandemic with COVID-19? Who would have thought we'd be having to deal with a global financial crisis? So what are we going to do? Are we going to allow the real enemy, which is our fears, cripple us? Or will we stand together and respond with courage and improvise, adapt, and overcome these fears so we're not slaves to them? So the Uncommon Truth vision is to humbly acknowledge the fact that life is about change. And we're going to always continue to change, whether we want it or not. The only consistent and certain thing in life is that change. Transitioning from one state or mindset to another. Life's about overcoming adversity and to progress and grow. So our vision is to basically serve people globally by asking the uncomfortable questions, bringing in experts to help us embrace our fears, uncertainties, and to seek the truth. And ultimately, with faith, keep knocking until we discover this uncommon truth. Together, we can do that. So our mission and intent is to empower us all to embrace change, to grow and transform our lives through the renewing of our mind. The Uncommon Truth is about guiding growth, enabling us to live with focus, clarity, and simplicity, empowering us to basically discover each of our own unique identity, untapped potential, and ultimately equipping us to grow, give, and get that ideal form of life that we all desire. So that's what the Uncommon Truth is to us and what we're aspiring to do. And we would like to basically ask you to join us as we go on this journey. So what is that? Well, what is the Uncommon Truth? Let's start by defining the common truth. Well, from my perception, it's what most of us think or what we individually accept or decide is our truth. But does that mean it is the truth? Now let's define what is uncommon about the truth. As Tony just said today before we started, it's fear. And truth doesn't have any fear, none. It doesn't care what I, you, we, or even they think. The truth is the truth. It's confident in the fact alone that it is what it is, true. The truth is freedom. So join us as we ask some of life's tough questions. We seek to answer and not persistently define the uncommon truth in the matters of life that affect us all in uncertain times. So let's begin this journey together today and find the uncommon truth. So our first talking point today is why the uncommon truth. Bob, would you like to start us off?
Heath Nacy said, yes, I will. One of the things you just commented on, which is quite interesting, is the concept of change. So let's just take a look at change. Human beings, and here's a bit of truth. Human beings are the only living things on planet Earth that actually have the ability to intentionally change. So I was just out hiking in the mountains just yesterday, and I took with me my bear repellent because hibernation is ending or has ended just recently. Bears are hungry. So every year bears go up into the woods, dig a hole in the snow and hibernate here in Canada. And they don't break from that. They do it year after year after year. They don't have the ability to change. Humans are different. Humans can at any time. We're not geese. We don't always fly north. We can fly south, east, west, or north, depending on what we want to do, right? So that's a bit of truth, is that we have the ability to change. But in these times, it's interesting with technology, and Tony can certainly speak to this. I just read recently that there's over 2.5 quintillion bytes of data that are created every single day. Now, I don't even know how much a quintillion is, but it's a massive amount of information. And I've noticed that over the last 10, 20 years, things are getting more and more confusing. It doesn't take long on searching on the internet or talking to somebody to discover that the things they're saying may not be true. They have heard them, they may believe them, but I don't believe that. I don't think it's true. So with all this information in the world, it's getting harder and harder to determine what is the truth, determine the true road, my true path, which way I should go. It's very confusing out there. I've got lots of years of experience behind me and tons of failures. So I know from my experiences what is probably the best path for me. So I can sift through things easier than many people that I meet and that I work with, and family members too. So it's a big challenge to figure out life's bigger questions. So practically, things like, how do I create wealth and prosperity? How do I be happy in my career? How can I find my perfect life partner? These are very practical questions that people deal with and struggle with. With all that misinformation and confusion that's out there today, it's difficult to figure out a path. And then the bigger questions like, who am I really? Who do I want to be? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? What's my purpose? These are huge questions that have answers. And I know that I've been blessed enough and lucky enough to have solved a lot of those things for myself. And part of my purpose to be with you guys today is to say that there is an answer for a lot of these things. There are paths for a lot of these things, but navigating through the clutter is a difficult challenge. And it's really good to have people that you can navigate it with. And that's why I'm happy to be here, Heath and Tony, is maybe we can be helpful to some people along the way to help them navigate through that clutter, help them find practical answers to practical questions, and maybe bigger answers to the bigger questions in life.
Thanks, Bob. I think that's just really well said. I think that the real truth is that together we can, right? As the old saying says, two heads are better than one. So, Tony, I'm really keen.
Tony, what do you think about that?
Yeah, what's the uncommon truth for you?
All this data in the world, all this clutter, all the misinformation that's out there. You find that that's confusing for people?
Oh, 100%. No, there's no question that just with the amount of data and the amount of access, like I was watching a video yesterday, and it was a Gary Vee video, and he was talking to a mom who's now working at home. She has a son who's in grade 3. And she's saying, she's at home on these Zoom calls, and she's a salesperson or something like that. And she's like, I need to be having these personal conversations, but at the same time, I need to be going and working with my kid for 4 hours a day to teach him grade 3 now, because this is a responsibility for homeschooling. And his response back to her was like, maybe at some point him learning base multiplication and cursive writing was important. But the question is how much is he going to use cursive writing going forward, right? Yeah. And how much is base multiplication going to matter when you've got this thing called an iPhone just, ready to go and sitting here that, maybe it's not as necessary because, maybe things have changed, right? And so,
well said.
I approach it a little bit from that bias, right? That things are changed. And sometimes, you have to force yourself to look at things through a different perspective, right? You always have this bias. Our biases are always the nature of our environment, of our upbringing, of our experiences, of our emotions, all of those type of things, right? And it's the lens through which you look at the world. And, the thing that I have found that I'm always able to do well when I'm given the opportunity to work with other people, like the two of you, I'm able to ask questions back to people in a perspective to make them think about things, to sort of shift their bias a little bit, to give them another perspective, right? And it's funny because it's harder to do on yourself than it is on anybody else, right? But this is where the meeting of the minds and a few people coming together is valuable, right? And so it's those kind of questions that I think at this time, at this stage of things that are happening, you have to have the emotional ability to sort of take your step back, ask yourself those hard questions. Ask yourself those things that, if this was my best friend coming to me with this problem, how would I approach it? Right. And so, in this time and in the way everything is kind of going right now, you have to be able to take that step away and look at things differently, because like you said, Bob, us as humans, we have the ability to react differently. It's not the situation. You can't control the situation. Nobody can get rid of this thing at this stage of what's going on. But how you react to it is completely in your hands. You can sit there and you can mope and you can be quarantined and you can do the things, or you can go out and find the 70-year-olds in your neighborhood that need groceries and are terrified to go to the grocery store and help them out and make a difference and make something that'll impact them, right?
Yeah.
It's all in how you react to the situations and how you respond. That's what I think makes the difference.
Yeah, and I love your comment, Tony, about the questions, right? Asking the questions. And there's an old adage that we learned long ago that said, if you ask the right questions, you can find the right answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you
the quality of our questions.
Yeah, but if you ask the wrong question, right, that leads to confusion. And Heath, I think that's part of the reason why the uncommon truth exists is, Tony and yourself, you guys have been through a lot. You've had a lot of experience and you guys know the questions to ask. So if I came to you and I've got this 21-year-old daughter that's just finishing university and she's wondering about her purpose, she's wondering about her path, right? And that for her to get some counsel, to know what questions to ask herself.
That's right.
Right? There's a tremendous wisdom there, and that allows people to find out the truth about their purpose, their passion, what they should be doing next in their life. Of course, she would make those decisions, but
that's right.
Have somebody to sound it off. I think that's why the uncommon truth is here, to help people figure out the questions and thus the answers.
Well, I think as well, what you both have alluded to is something that I've heard Tony Robbins say at when I was at an event with him in Abu Dhabi. And I was really fortunate to be in the Platinum Partners there. And he talked about our life conditions equals our beliefs, and the beliefs are our truth. Mm-hmm. And we're only going to be happy or fulfilled when they are aligned. If our beliefs and truth are not aligned with our life conditions, we are unhappy and unfulfilled. So, Tony, you just also spoke to a really important point, I thought, is that those beliefs drive our emotions. Our emotions create motion or our actions, and therefore our life conditions and the circumstances that we're living in every day. And Bob, I think this is a great segue that you just said, using your daughter as an example of having to find out and make decisions on what are my beliefs on this subject. It leads back to the quality of our questions, which then defines, the answer defines, okay, I believe it. Now, is that the truth or not? Is back to what we were talking about earlier. So, question number 2, how do we now discover what the truth is? As people, as we're going through our life, each of us and our circumstances, our children, it never ends the question of, is this the truth?
Yes, yeah.
How do people discover the truth?
And that's because of all the clutter out there and all the answers out there and all the options out there, like never before in the history of the world, people get confused and people listen to things that aren't the truth and go down these paths for quite a long time. So I was just reading some data on the amount of depression there is in people today, and some startling statistics that 50% of people in North America experience depression significantly through the course of a year. And many of these people are depressed much of the time or all of the time. And there's reasons for that, of course, but it's hard to think clearly. It's hard to seek out the truth when you're depressed, when you're struggling. And life is a struggle. I look back on my life and I've struggled mightily at times in careers, starting businesses, in relationships, with raising my children. And there's fascinating, powerful lessons that come out of those experiences. But when you're in the midst of it, when you're in the midst of a divorce, or you're in the midst of failing school, or um, business has gone bankrupt on you, or these, and Keith, you talked about them as being times of transition. Mm-hmm. It's very, very difficult to seek the next step, to do the right thing. Much of the time, people are frozen in place, or going down bad paths. I think the use of OxyContin and other prescriptive pills are at the highest rates we've ever seen too. So people are looking for answers, but it's very, very difficult to find those answers. They're not necessarily on the internet. Where they can be found is by seeking wise counsel, by going to the people that have been through this stuff before. And I think that's another reason for this, for our group to exist, Tony and Heath. It's to give a wise counsel. It's to listen to people's stories. It's to help them ask the questions and find their way. The truth is there, but it takes the ability to find the wise counsel, seek the wise counsel, and also look in the mirror and figure out, like, what just happened? Why did my business go bankrupt? Why did that relationship not work? And really have that self introspection.
You know, you're really hitting on a point that Tony, I'd love your input on, but it comes down to something that I heard Les Brown say. And our society today has the tendency that easy equals right. And Les Brown has this great saying that if it's easy at the beginning, it will be hard at the end. If it's hard at the beginning, it will be easy at the end. So this journey of life, in my opinion, is actually not meant to be easy. And we should be asking a question about the truth if it is too easy, because the struggle is how we learn and grow. So Tony, what do you think about that, the whole point of us discovering the truth?
Yeah, well, something was going through my mind as you were talking about this, and it's, you know, there's definitely, these things are hard, right? We're going to hit struggles. We're going to have to go through these things in life, and to figure out the answers to these things is a challenge. And I think that's where a lot of people fall into, you know, the drugs or the depression or things like that, because that decision-making process, right? That moment that you need to get to is perhaps uncomfortable, right? That moment of truth where you go, I need to give up this addiction, or I need to quit this job, or I need to make this transition, is a scary decision for somebody to make. It's a hell of a lot easier for you to go hide in a hole and, you know, drink or do drugs or get caught up in Netflix, whatever your, you know, addiction is of the time. It's easy to get away from that, right? But you know, I think that there's an incredible opportunity, and this, I think, would maybe be some of the counsel to the 21-year-olds is that at this time, we have an unprecedented amount of information and access and tools at our disposal to be able to do anything, right? At one point, as a 21-year-old, you knew that your path to getting anywhere was intern, work long hours, be a slave to the commute, like do all of these kind of things. Now, I would argue, as a 21-year-old, you have as much access as the 55-year-old executive who's been doing this for 30 years, because you can go on a YouTube channel and get 1 million views tomorrow if you do something crazy enough or interesting enough or whatever it happens to be.
Valuable enough.
Exactly. Or, well, ideally it's valuable enough, but I mean, if you do something wacky, then you'll get eyeballs as well,
exactly.
Right?
Well said, brother.
the point is the attention side of things. And I think what that does for people, young and old today, is that we have an unprecedented amount of access and ability to learn quickly and sort of fail fast, right? My background is Silicon Valley for the last chunky years. There is a mantra down there that you fail fast and you fail often. And that's just kind of the way that it is, right? And you get to that point where either you know that you have, you know, it's going to work or it's not, but just get to that decision right away. And as people struggling through a transition point or starting their life journey and realizing that they need to do this thing called adulting or whatever it is, They have the ability, go make a YouTube channel and see if you can make a run of it for a few months on the side while you're waiting tables or while you're doing this other stuff or you're going to school. I'm like, why not try a side hustle where you do copywriting for an athletic agency because you have a passion for sports statistics? Like it is so easy and so quick to get out there and do these things and move quickly through them that you'll find out very quickly in 3 months or 6 months whether it worked or not. And the beautiful thing that you'll gain from that is experience. And that is the thing that you cannot skip over. You need to learn these things for yourself. And while you're trying to find those answers, you have to realize these answers are very personal, right? Your why and your answers are not necessarily going to be the same as everyone else's, right? But you have the ability to move so quickly through these things and get to that point now that I think people have the ability during these uncomfortable times to be able to move quickly and learn this stuff because these tools are at your disposal. The key is not to get overwhelmed by them. It's how to kind of harness them for good, not evil, let's say.
Right on. Oh, well said. So well said. And actually leads beautifully, great segue into, well, the biggest barriers to discovering that truth. And what I'm hearing both of my friends here today are talking about is that fear to fail. And really what is failure to me, what I've learned, I'm an acronym king, is it's a fantastic adventure in learning. And I have to own it. This whole process of launching today, The Uncommon Truth, has been over 2 years. It's taken me way too long because of my fears to try to be perfect, my fears of what other people think, my fear of will I miss out on something, and on it goes, the fears. So I struggle. And what I've really learned from my journey over my failures is that I'm not unique. As much as I think my problems and challenges are unique, the truth is that we all have them. Would you say that's correct? And in that aspect?
Well, when you're talking about fear and experience, Heath, right? So, and experience often breeds fear. Like if you've had a relationship gone poorly, been really, really hurt in a relationship, processing that, right, and going back into a relationship, it can be very, very difficult. As an example, if you've had a business go bankrupt or failed the business or been fired from a job, then these are the things that really cause massive fears. It's like, I don't want to fail again. But you alluded to the fact that so those are barriers. The truth is that what's the truth from that about relationships? What's the truth about careers? And what's the truth about business if you've had these massive failures? And that's the process of processing that, the whole experience, and really understanding what happened in those experiences, and then changing, right? Changing as a result of that. So that's the intentional change that comes from that. So I've been fired 3 times in my career. They all happened in my 20s when I was gung-ho and going hard, right? And each one of those cases very individual, very unusual cases, and I would say at the end of the day, a lot of it was out of my control. However, it doesn't matter. It happened, right? So the question is, what do you do with that information? How do you go forward? How do you build relationships at work? How do you build relationships in business? And what do you do with those experiences in order to be more successful and for it not to happen again? So fascinating thing. The other thing I'd like to say about fear, and Tony, maybe you can build on this, is fear is not necessarily in your face. It's this, it maybe for many cases, it's not recognizable. So Heath, you talked about having 2 years, and you may have known it was fear, right? But maybe it's more subtle than that. So a lot of people are experiencing fear, but they wouldn't recognize it as fear. They would just not do stuff. So I think fear sometimes, almost. Pardon me?
Procrastination almost, right? It can manifest itself in procrastination because there's an easy path and a hard path, right?
Brilliant. That's an exact perfect example. It's like I'm a procrastinator. Well, you are, but the root of it is fear. So it's this subtle stuff, man, that unless you get into a dialogue with somebody that's been there before, or somebody that can hold you to account. And that's, Heath, I think that's part of the reason for the Uncommon Truth is we're almost like an accountability club, you and I together, right? It's like you do stuff and I hold you accountable. You say stuff and I hold you accountable, and vice versa. And to have that in your life, to have a person in your life, people in your life that just don't listen to what you say and kind of pat you on the back, but actually hold you to account. Reflect back to you what you're really doing is really helpful, really helpful for overcoming that barrier of fear. I'll let that
100%.
go. Tony,
100%.
go.
So, Tony, I think that I really value your input, but just one point before you do, that experience you mentioned, both of you, and what you're just alluding to, in the being involved with a group and being accountable in life is critical, because wisdom, as Tony alluded to, really is experience. It's not knowledge that makes you wise. It's the ability to apply the knowledge, which back again comes from falling down and getting back up. So Tony, please go.
Yeah, and it's again, as you were talking, I'm starting to remember a few things. You know, this time is very uncertain, and yet, you know, me personally, you know, I talk to my wife every night. And she's, you know, are we going to be okay? You know, what about this? What's happening in the world, right? And there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's funny. I don't even flinch at this stuff anymore because I know we'll be all right. Because if I rewind a few years years ago in my life, I at one point was living out of an RV with no home in Canada, a place that I'd leased in the Silicon Valley that I was paying way too much money for, a visa that had been revoked, 2 dogs, a cat, a raccoon living outside my RV, 2 kids, like, you know, and the point is that, like, at that point, I was at kind of, I wouldn't say my lowest because it was just a hard time. It wasn't a low point, but it was a very, very challenging mountain that I had to overcome. But look, we made it. And I remember quite clearly a week after that, driving through the redwood forest in like Southern Oregon, Northern California, and going through these giant trees and playing with my children in this area. And, you know, I just remember, I'm like, it was all right. Like there's points of challenge, but you will always be okay coming out the other side. And I think when it comes to fear, if you have the experience of sort of falling down and picking yourself back up, you have to rely on that. And in cases where you don't have that personal experience, that practicum that you can drive into, you need to find wisdom or coaches or some sort of mentor, somebody that will be able to paint that picture and say, like, look, you'll survive these scenarios. These are okay, right? This too shall pass, as they say. And I think that's part of the, you know, the bias that you have to take with this, is that you look back on your own experience and you're like, look, even in the hardest of things, when we have had to do this, we will figure it out. And that is my kind of faith for the human race at this point. And that, you know, we have never been at this point where, you know, you can talk to an Amazon customer service rep in India and say, stay safe, my friend, to them, and know that you're kind of in the same boat as this person. This is a unique time. This is a very, very unique time. So, you know, I think if we all just fall back onto that, we'll be all right.
I don't disagree at all. Go ahead, Bob.
Heath, just to build on Tony just dropped another huge truth there, right? And that's maybe what the Uncommon Truth is all about, is he's talking about struggles that he has. He's very successful, and Heath's very, very successful as well. And Heath and I know many, many very successful people that are firing on all cylinders when you look at them. But when you dig a little deeper, the truth is that everybody has struggles. Everybody has struggled. Even the most successful of us have had challenges and are having massive challenges in our life. So, Tony, we are all in the same boat, and that's one of the truths. Is doesn't matter what your social economic status, where you live, we're just human beings.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. You know, and guys, this is such great discussion. We have so many things to discuss and to go into, but I think, you know, as we're kind of trying to bring this into a concise thing, is what is the value of bringing people together to really seek together the uncommon truth? What do you feel that is? And for me, as I talked about transition, I talked about change. I believe that it starts with awareness that we were just sort of alluding to. And that awareness starts the cycle of change, because you go from oblivious to you get the penny drops, you go, oh. That then puts us into a state that's called conscious incompetence. It's like when we're driving the car and you're learning, you're grinding the gears, etc. But you're actually still driving. You've begun the journey. Then through effort and practice and creating new habits, you become consciously competent and you can actually drive. And the grinding is less and there's the odd slipping of a clutch. And then all of a sudden, some time has passed, and then all of a sudden, one day you're driving down the road. This is before the laws were changed. You're on your cell phone, the radio's going, your knee's on the steering wheel, and you're shifting gears without missing a beat. It's become identity. It's become unconsciously competent. This cycle of change, I think, affects everything that we're going through. How do we really be effective through coming together, through support, through accountability, help this cycle of change? And what do you feel is the right way to do it?
I think, I've seen a lot of value in the communities, right?
Yeah.
Me personally, one of our ventures is a CrossFit gym, and I see very, very quickly the value of just people connecting with each other that they don't get in the physical space, which you sort of take for granted, right? But I think in this time, you have to find like-minded communities of people that can sort of ask you those questions. And, Facebook is a great forum for it. YouTube is a great forum for it. Q&As and stuff like that. All of that is great forums for it. But you got to find like-minded individuals that can speak to that experience and that side of things. I mean, that's where the value comes out.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Bob, how about you?
Well, great question, Heath. My experience has been that many people are caught in the day-to-day routines of life, raising children, going to work, just doing the things they've always done. And when we start to talk with them, we find that they're in a holding pattern. They maybe have been in a holding pattern as a student for many years. Maybe they've been going to school to university for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, couple 3, 4 degrees even. I've met people like this, and they're caught on a treadmill where they don't know which way to go. They're okay, right? They're eating food and they've got friends, etc. But deeper down inside, you don't have to scratch very far. It's like they're lost. They're hungry for something else. They're looking for something else. They're lonely. They don't think they're achieving their true potential. They don't even know what their true potential is. So for people that are in transition, or people that are looking for something more, or for people that are starting to explore life in more complexity and more detail, for those types of people, I think there's an opportunity to explore those things. You can explore those on your own, of course, but it so helps if you're with a group of like-minded individuals. And Heath, you'll remember way back when we were just young pups, we were both going through transition times. You're going from a policeman to running a business, and that business went up to 8 figures, I think, 10 figures, some huge number.
It had some growth. That's true.
That's right. But you had to go through this. You were an exceptional policeman, and you had to make that transition. And I was going through a life transition as well. And you and I got together with 7 or 8 like-minded people that were in transition. One of the bits of truth in my life has been is the adage was, if I heard this somewhere, that if I was the smartest person in my group of friends, that I had to get a new group of friends. This person in my group of friends. So I heard that or read that years before, and that was one of my objectives, was to create a group of friends around me that were smarter than me. I wanted to be the dumb bunny in the group, so I could learn. So I did that. I was intentional about that, and meeting you was part of that process, right? And we knew other people, And that's what happened is we brought together a group of people that were smarter than us, bud. And we met with them on a
Well
monthly
said.
basis. We went to retreats with these people and we asked the hard questions. We were a men's accountability group. That's what we ended up being. And we asked the hard questions of each other about our relationships, about our children, about our businesses. And I can remember sitting in those meetings. This is kind of an informal, formal situation with a lot of leaders in the room that made it happen. Where we would be held to account for things that we said we were going to do, actions we were going to take. We were going in directions that weren't good for us, and we were held to account to that too. And that was very, very helpful. So I see the uncommon truth is having that kind of value as well. When you bring people together to hold to them to account, to bring new ideas, and also to encourage. Like there was so much. We're friends with that group today, Heath. 30 years later, those are some of our best friends.
True.
And
very well said.
They've been the biggest encouragement to me, right? And role models too.
So how come I got bite marks? How come I got bite marks still from some of the group? No, I had to be held accountable more often.
Yeah. But I really see. So I would invite all our listeners to there'll be room to interact with Heath and Tony and myself. You can write comments down. At our stage of life, Heath. One of the reasons he's done this, he's got one of his purpose in life and mission in life is to share, and he's had a lot of experience, a lot of business experience, a lot of personal experience, a lot of massive successes, and to be able to share, talk, and dialogue with a guy like Heath and a guy like Tony would be really helpful. And it only takes, and Tony, I'll pass this on to you now, but it only takes one person to say one thing that can dramatically alter your life. Yeah. And remember that I got straight C minuses in high school, and I thought that I really wasn't very intelligent. And I went through university as well, thinking I wasn't intelligent. And then I got into this job where I had a mentor, and he just, one performance evaluation, he sat back, he looked at me, he said, "Bob, you're one of the most intelligent people I've ever had the privilege of working with." And that's one line, man. That's one line he said to me. And that changed my paradigm at that point in time. You have to read. Like, you just have to read. You have to watch stuff and read stuff. So there's no excuse not to watch and read now because you're intelligent. One thing said to you that dramatically alters your direction in one part of your life. Boy, oh boy, what a difference it can make.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a big reason why, I've, personally just kind of at the back end of one of these transition points where I left Silicon Valley and kind of corporate America type job and decided to go off on the entrepreneur journey. And I think at this stage, one of my big purposes, the big main reasons for me doing what I'm doing is to help others. It's almost it's a place of service that I think I'm coming from, that, literally I'm in a place where, I'm fine. I can take care of my family. I can spend some time on some projects. I can do these type of things. And I realized over the last 3 years of working with entrepreneurs and struggling founders and people in charge of some of the fastest growing businesses on the planet, that I can have a 30-minute conversation with these people and really, really change their perspective on things, just simply by asking them these questions and doing these things and, digging these things out, asking them the hard questions about, well, why do you actually care about that? Do you actually want to be doing this job, and getting them into a place where they are uncomfortable with this truth that they are starting to realize. And so that is now my mission sort of at scale. And I think this is one of the forums that can do it through sort of mentorship groups and that type of thing, is that just give people the ability to have a conversation with people that have had a good round of experiences and a sort of a breadth of stories that they could share. And hopefully that if I have a conversation with 50 different people, I can change one of them to a point where they can go out and make a difference for somebody else, right? That's kind of the hope for right now.
Well, I think really segued in for me. Thank you, Tony. And we're all in agreement on that. That's why we're here today. The uncommon truth is really about three main key things, and that is education, training, and mentorship. Communicating and overall walking forward with all kinds of thought leaders on different topics and asking those hard questions. The training through groups, through us being involved with people to be accountable and to walk the journey, to face those hard times, to choose the hard way over the easy way so that we can finish easy versus having to finish hard. And then lastly is mentoring, getting those one-on-one opportunities with peers that we learn from, or from one of us or one of the thought leaders that we bring into our group. The point is that these different types of touch points give us a diverse way and method to learn. And obviously in this current life circumstances that we're in, some of our truths are being questioned about the way things are being done. And I had thought that was going to be done through physical events. Yet we decided that that's not our truth now. And for the uncommon truth to move forward, we had to start. And here we are on Zoom, and we're going to continue to expand with apps, and we're going to expand with technology and create experiential learning through technology. And then eventually, when everything gets back to the new normal, begin to introduce that social contact again through events and physical groups and getting into proximity. So how do we bring value together? I just basically said it. We got to really be clear on our focus and the proximity. Proximity being all of our senses: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. The real truth, though, is that the VAC is the term. The visual, auditory, and kinesthetic is really what matters. And how we can do that in today's world is now through Zoom. So that's something that I think that I'm grateful for you, Tony, and your expertise that you've been bringing to our team, and the technology, and really educating us and how to, us old guys, to really adapt and to improvise, adapt, and overcome. I think the message is really important, and ultimately it's about bringing value. And that's what I see each of us being committed to. We're aligned, that we want to bring value to people, to empower them to be able to experience something better in their life, and to realize that it's okay to challenge the common truth that's affected by fear, that's affected by opinion, and seek the uncommon truth, which has no fear. So just as that last point, what do you feel about bringing value to people? And then we'll go into close, and basically I'll do a summary of what we're talking about. But what value do you feel we need to bring to people in this journey of the?
Well, we've got a world of experience between us, and we're not the all beings with all the answers for sure, but we can facilitate people meeting with other people, being introduced to other people, sharing some of our insight and wisdom. We certainly can respond to people if they are having challenges, if they would like advice, if they'd like some direction, if they'd like to share some stories. So many people out there that will be listening to this, Heath, that actually have more wisdom than us and more knowledge than us, wiser than us, and that we may actually would want to have on this our show, right? Our Zoom presentation. So we're open to that. I think we've got a series of scheduled events like this. We'll be bringing in talent, people that could be helpful and certainly interesting. And as we go forward, we invite people to join us, share with us, and help and grow along with us.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
The one of the other pieces that I think the way that I like to look at it is everybody sort of has chapters in their story, right? And throughout life, you continue to write other chapters, and every chapter is sort of on a topic, or it's a story, or it's a journey that's kind of been overcome, right? And I think the collective collection of those chapters between the three of us, plus our networks of people and the other experiences and the other stories that we've heard from colleagues and mentors and all the other places. That's the value of having a dialogue and be able to apply a specific chapter to a specific person asking a question at that time, right? It's one thing to read a book. It's another thing to talk to the author of the book who wrote the chapter behind it and be able to get the context, right?
Correct.
That is where the value comes from this stuff. And I, you know, in all forums and in all methods, that's what I kind of aspire to try to do is connect the people that need to hear that chapter or need to hear that story with the author of that chapter. And hopefully that can add some value to that person.
Agreed. Good one.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well said. So as we move forward in this journey, and you know, while social media can be a great divider and an isolator, it also means it's a place where we can introduce and be introduced to people, as Bob already spoke to that. The Uncommon Truth is going to have regular postings. We're going to be using YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, just to name a few. And we'll be here to discuss topics and search for the important truth together. So we invite you to join us as we speak to some of life's really tough, hard questions. We're going to seek the answers together, and we're going to knock persistently. We're going to find the uncommon truth in the matters of life that affect us all. So remember to click that subscribe button, and let's begin this journey together and find the uncommon truth. Thank you for joining us here for our inaugural introduction to the uncommon truths. And remember to come back soon. We're going to record episode 1 coming to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.